like to extend a warm welcome on behalf of Department of Botany, Vidyabharti College, Seloo, for conducting one-day national webinar on Indian biodiversity issues, challenges, and initiatives. I am delighted to offer a hearty welcome to our patron, Honorable Dr. R.G. Bhoyer sir, Vidyabharti Sanstha, Wardha, for this webinar. Once again, I welcome you, sir. I'm glad to welcome our beloved principal, Dr. Sanjay Kanode sir, for this webinar. I would like to take this opportunity to express a hearty welcome to our resource person, Dr. Alka Chaturvedi ma'am, ex-professor and head, PG Department of Botany, RTMNU, Nagpur. I extend my welcome to the convener of this workshop, of this webinar, Dr. Kushal Patade sir. I also give my welcome to the organizing secretary, Dr. Vishal Patil sir. I welcome teaching fraternity from other institutes and colleges, student participation from other institutions and colleges. I also welcome our college students and my colleagues. Once again, I extend a hearty welcome to all of you for this webinar. Thank you so much. Now, to begin this webinar, I would like to invite Dr. Pathade sir to give the introductory remark. Over to Pathade sir.
Thank you, Professor Anurag sir, Organizing Secretary of National Webinar Indian Biodiversity Issues, Challenges and Initiatives, respected director and honorable dignitaries present on the dais on the online and offline in the national webinar Indian Biodiversity Issues, Challenges and Initiatives organized by Department of Botany, Vidyabharti College, Seloo. First of all, I would like to welcome all of you who joined online as well as offline mode of the seminar. As a convener of this seminar, privileged to see our respected patron, Dr. Rajesh Goyal sir, President of Vidyabharti Sanstha Wardha. I extend my welcome from my bottom of my heart. Welcome you, sir. Your presence is always gives us the inspiration to organize such type of webinar or conferences. Welcome you, sir, again. So, today seminar was organized under the direction of our beloved principal, Dr. Sanjay Kanode sir. Welcome you, sir. And today's chief guest and speaker for this seminar, Dr. Alka Chaturvedi madam, ex-professor and head, Department of Botany, Rashtrapati Firoz Maharaj, Nagpur University, Nagpur. Welcome you, madam. So, this national webinar is organized by the department on the issues of today's challenges, how to biodiversity to loss in our India, by some factors which are responsible for this biodiversity losses. First of all, I say something or say two words, escalating the human population. That is the first main reason to lose the biodiversity as well as habitat destruction and fragmentation, overuse of natural resources, impact of non-native or exotic species which were planted in many areas, alarming the natural calamities is the most important factor to loss the biodiversity and energy resources. So the challenges in Indian biodiversity in India, near about 10 mega biodiversity centers are there, in which 45,000 plant species, 89,000 species of animals have been documented, which comprising 6.5% of all known wildlife. So, for this biodiversity, so our main aim to conserve the biodiversity on this main and objective. Alka Chaturvedi madam, thank you sir to give chance me to say few words. Thank you Anurag sir. Over to you.
Okay, sir. Thank you for giving such a wonderful introductory remark. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Vishal Patil, sir, to introduce our today's resource person, Dr. Alka Chaturvedi, ma'am, for this webinar. Over to Dr. Vishal Patil, sir.
Thank you, Professor Kupat, sir. Good morning, one and all. I am Dr. Vishal Patil, Assistant Professor in Botany, Vidyabharti College, Seloo, District Wardha, Maharashtra. It's my immense pleasure to introduce today's resource person and my guru, Professor Dr. Alka Chaturvedi, madam. From the track of academic record, madam obtained her first doctorate degree from Devi Ahila University, Indore, on the topic Flora of Ratlam district, Madhya Pradesh. After joining postgraduate teaching department of botany, she obtained her second PhD degree from Lucknow University on comparative embryology in few taxa of family Euphorbacea. Madam had 37 years of research experience and 32 years of teaching experience of postgraduate classes. Under her guidance, 17 students received doctorate degree, 5 students submitted thesis, and 1 student is working on submission during her retirement period. During this span of 22 years, she has completed 12 independent and collaborative projects by state, national, and international agencies. She also got opportunity to get trained in park management in Indiana University, US. In addition to taxonomic studies, she is also involved in research on ecology, phytochemistry, reproductive biology, tissue culture. Her lab got success in standardized media for in vitro regeneration of medically important plants, studied biological activities, antimicrobial, antifungal, potential drugs for dental caries, anti-inflammatory, herbal insecticides, preparation of biopesticides, study on extraction and isolation of citric compounds, phytosterol, and natural dyes. She has discovered to new to science, that's Mudaniopsis and Amatophilus Hamthalianum. She has guided Bitneria herbaceae, endemic and threatened taxa monographic research work. She has submitted ITF gene sequences of Bitneria herbaceae and Bitneria aspera to NCBI US. She has added 11 new plant reports to the Flora of Maharashtra state. She is referee in number of journals. Till date, she has published more than 140 research papers in refereed journals. She has number of books in her credits. These and common important ethnobotany and taxonomic angiosperms, forest and agriculture, synergies for rural development, enhancing tribal livelihood, a resource management approach, participatory land use, planning for community resource management, and livelihood security. She was a part of several state level committees, fellow of Indian Association of Angiosperm Taxonomists and Plant Reproducibologist, Indian Science Congress, convener Nagpur chapter in 2014. Executive member of Indian Association of Angiosperm Taxonomy, Ecological Impact Assessment Committee, Research Assessment Committee of Forest Department, Maharashtra State, subject experts in Research Development Committee, Geology University Gwalior, DAV Indore. She was also nominated as expert member as in Professor Selection Committee of Jammu University, Vidyasagar University, Midnapur, West Bengal, Calicut University, Calicut, Kerala, SGB University, Amravati, Maharashtra, Lucknow University, Lucknow, Uttar Pradesh, Rashtrasanta Tukadoji Maharaj, Nagpur University, Nagpur, Maharashtra, Research Development Committee, Geology University, Gwalior, Devi Ahilya University, Indore, and also as a member of NAC. She has successfully organized 15th Annual Conference of Indian Association of Angiosperm Taxonomy and National Seminar Advances in Taxonomy, National Seminar on Biodiversity, Conservation and Sustainable Development, also conducted many national seminars, workshops held at Postgraduate Teaching Department of Botany, Rashtrasanta Tukadoji Maharaj, Nagpur University, Nagpur. She has coordinated 10 UGC-sponsored refresher courses on life sciences. She has credited by special honors, awards, prizes, elected as the counselor in Indian Association of Angiosperm Taxonomy Executive Body for the year 2012-2013. Treasurer, Indian Science Congress Association, Nagpur Chapter, Convener, Nagpur Chapter, Sectional Committee Member, received Distinguished Women Scientist Award in International Conference at Department of Chemistry, Rashtrasanta Tukadoji Maharaj, Nagpur University, Nagpur. Best, Best Teacher Researcher Awards by Rashtrasanta Tukadoji Maharaj, Nagpur University, Nagpur. Shivarajan Awards by Indian Association of Angiosperm Taxonomy. Savitri Sahani Awards by Birbal Sahani Foundation, Lucknow. Lifetime Achievement Award at Second Global Literary Noida. With these huge introductions of today's resource person, Professor Dr. Alka Chaturvedi Madam, I request to start this session. Please, Madam, over to Madam. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Patil, and thank you, organizer, also for giving good introduction and reminding me all those things which I have done in past. Thank you again. And so now I'll start my screen sharing, and the topic, which is biodiversity issues, challenges, and what we can do, that is initiatives. So today is 19 January and 2021. And if we start from where this term biodiversity has come. It is very interesting to know that it was Thomas Lovejoy who introduced the biodiversity, biological diversity in two words during one conference, and later on in 1985 it was Walter G. Rosen, who contracted these two words into a single word, that is biodiversity. Now question comes, why they merged the two words and what was the reason behind this development of this new science, that is biological diversity or biodiversity. So it may be realization that now the resources are getting lesser and lesser or smaller in quantity, and number of the other factors which are having their impact on the production of these resources. So from the taxonomy, now the world is moving toward the conservation, and this is the reason that from 1980 onwards, we are finding that number of the papers are coming in the arena of biodiversity. Lately, the term biodiversity is in fashion, and it is used in place of much used word taxonomy. However, if we see the biodiversity, which is having much wider implication and much wider meaning, it is a continuous phenomena transgressing all hierarchical categories, depicting variation of characters from family to individual. It can be plant diversity, animal diversity, family, genus or species diversity. It may be population diversity, ecological diversity, or genetic diversity, all integrating into one another. So the time when in 1980 was used, it was just the biodiversity, that is total variety of life on earth, and that has included all genes, species and ecosystem and ecological processes, that is the functional aspect which is a part of this biodiversity. But unfortunately, most of the recent papers which are coming on biodiversity, they are only detecting the plurality of the plant resources rather than diversity. Because in fact, biodiversity comes under the realm of ecology and conservation biology, where focus is more on conservation than interrelationship. So term biodiversity, although it is around 40 or 35 years old, but still this is a very small period for the development of any new branch. And development of this branch is basically related to our own life, our own concern, and that's why a lot of work is required to do in this line. But when we go through the review of literature, we find that hardly any work is done. And whatever is reported in the form of biodiversity, it is simply plurality of plant resources and not the actual work. But at the same time, it is also true that biodiversity depends upon the taxonomy. Without taxonomy, we cannot identify the biodiversity, and likewise, diversity is also required for study of the taxonomy. So this is a very recent branch, and now question comes, why we are more concerned about the biodiversity, as it is the very basis of the human survival and economic well-being, and it encompasses all life forms, ecosystem and ecological processes. The current estimate of the total number of species on earth vary from 5 to more than 100 millions, with a more conservative figure of 13.6 million species. And of these, only 1.78 million species have yet been identified. So having the biodiversity is just like when you go to the hospital, you are a patient of COVID or terminal illness and you go to the hospital and it's said that there is no oxygen. So what will be the condition of that patient? Just like this, if there is no biodiversity, how it will suffer our own existence. Hence, there is lot of concern now towards the biodiversity. And another interesting feature, although we see that number of the life form, they are more than in between 5 to 100 millions, but they are just the plurality. We can't say that it is the real biodiversity. So, if we see what is the biodiversity of the India, in case of the India, as we know, biodiversity of any region, it is not the India, but in any part of the world, biodiversity it is confined or it is shaped by number of the factors. There are edaphic factors, there are climatic factors, there are topographic factors, there is time scale, there is space, there is interaction, and there is impact of many of the factors on the biodiversity. So in case of all these, there is a great range of the ecosystem and habitats such as forest, grassland ecosystem, and desert. We have mountains which are too high and we have mountains which are low in height. At the same time, if we see the geography of the earth or if we see the geology of this India, here we find that position of the India is such a place that it is more favorite area because it is very close to the tropical or equatorial region. It has very old land system, that is the Gondwana land mass. So the age of the space, size of the space, that is around 2.6% of the total earth surface. It is very good. And there are variety of the climatic, edaphic and topographic factors. All these factors, they give a reason for the development of biodiversity. If we see this map, there are a number of the geographical regions which are affecting the biodiversity. Likewise, there is topographic region starting from the high Trans-Himalayan region to Himalaya region and to the desert region, then from semi-arid, evergreen, green, Gangetic plain, northeast region and number of the islands. Likewise, if we see the climatic zone, we have the two cold region of the Himalayan region, then the desertic region. On the eastern and western coastal region, climate is entirely different, and in the central part of the India, that is the Deccan Plateau, again we find different type of the climatic condition. Likewise, if we see the topographic region, this topographic region is also showing very ups and downs, highland and lowland, and thus they are giving variety of the habitat to the region. In addition to these, there are biogeographical zones which represent two realms, that is Himalaya, that is Palearctic realm, and the rest of the subcontinent that is represented by Malayan realm. Then we have 5 biomes, we have 10 biogeographical regions, and we have 27 biogeographic provinces. In sum total, there are about 3,000 endemic plant species which are present in the Himalayas and Khasi Hills of northeastern India and around 2,000 in the Deccan Plateau in the south. More than 1,000 species are reported from the Western Ghat region and the Silent Valley, Western Ghat and Eastern Himalaya region. They are known for their endemic species and also endangered species. Now, if we see what is the total number of biodiversity in case of India, here we find that in sum total, if the world is having 4,45,688 number of the life form, India is well represented by 49,003 species. And this data is just of the few months back data. So it is a very recent data, and it shows that all these plants, they are having a big percentage in comparison to the total flora of the world. And as far as number of the endemic species are concerned, they are very high. That is more than 4,303 species of the angiosperms are endemic. And likewise, many other plants or small non-flowering plants and small flora are endemic in nature. And many of them, they are threatened species of the India. So it is very clear that all the geographic, climatic, topographic, bioregion of the India, they have given a good opportunity for the speciation, but at the same time we are finding that number of the species are also threatened. So here is our concern that how many species are going to threaten, and this is the limited data because we have not covered each and every part of the country. So biodiversity in India is important because among many other things, it provides a lot of things to us. For example, food, feed, fodder. For example, other things like pharmaceuticals, like medicinal plant, it also provide number of the timber, oil or other bioresources which are needed for our existence, and all they are derived from various plant species. It is also a source of economical wealth for many areas, such as parks and forests, where wild nature and animals are source of beauty and joy, and they attract many visitors. So, when we say that lifeline of the country is based on biodiversity, and although we know it, but still we are seeing that number of the plants are going to the extinction. So there is need to search what are the reasons for this loss of the biodiversity. So one among all comes the destruction of the habitat. So it is said to be primary reason for the loss of the biodiversity, because when you want to feed number of the people, steaming population of the India need space for their habitation. They need food for they need agriculture for their food supply. So burning of the forest or conversion of the forest into the cropland, and then it comes to the wasteland, and then poaching of number of the species is responsible for the major threat. Likewise, overutilization leads to the climate change, and ultimately it leads to the pollution and loss of the species. Therefore, one of the most essential environmental issue in India now is conservation of biodiversity. So now if we see the habitat destruction, number of the things which are here, in what way we have started dividing our forest land into the fragments or smaller pieces of the land, and how we are trying to save the land. For example, while making the 6 to 8 lane of the road along the forest, it is not necessary. If your road is passing through the biodiversity rich region, it is not necessary that they should have 4 or 8 lanes. Only 2 lanes is sufficient for the transport or movement. Likewise, fragmentation of the land for the development of monoculture, for example, monoculture of the eucalyptus, casuarina, teak, silver oak, or other cash crop, By this, we are cutting the forest and we are fragmenting the habitat into the number of the pieces. Although this phenomena is not new, but still we are not able to say. There is very few research which is done in this direction, that what is the impact of fragmentation. If there is broad road which is passing through the forest, whether it is hampering the movement of pollinator, whether it is checking movement of all those dispersers of the uh, propagules or seed of the plant. Likewise, it is not known whether they are having any other effect, because when we fragment any compact forest, it means we are allowing other species to enter. We are giving the open space, or we are making arrangement for the entry of the other plants. So in this way, it is not uh, there is not much done in this direction to know what is the impact of fragmentation of the habitat. Then, as we know, there is increase in the population from 53 millions, now we are in the billion. So to feed this, agriculture is the prime activity. Agriculture is responsible for 80% of the global deforestation. It is responsible for 29% of the global gases which are polluting the environment. It is responsible for 70% of the freshwater use. As major agriculture, it needs the fresh water. You can't go for the marine water. So although India is surrounded on three sides by the water, but basically it is the fresh water, 70% of the fresh water, which is used for the agriculture. Likewise, these are drivers which are linked to the food production that causes 70% of the terrestrial biodiversity loss, because we are converting forest into the grassland, into the cropland, and then the grassland and wasteland. So in this way, there is 70% loss of the terrestrial biodiversity. Likewise, there is 50% of the freshwater biodiversity loss is also included, and 52%. All these agricultural activity, they result in 52% of the degraded agricultural land. So in this way, by simple act, that is to provide food for populace, when we are converting or when we are using more than enough land, then it is resulting in the loss of the habitat and also loss of the biodiversity. Then overexploitation of the bioresources is one of the reasons, as excessive commercial demand from rapidly expanding pharmaceutical industry, for which no collection regulation exists. It affects medicinal plant of various taxa. Dioscorea deltoides and Rauwolfia serpentina, they are well known for number of the diseases, and they are known by tribals also. So there is lot of removal from the natural resources, and this over exploitation of bioresources is leading to the depletion of this particular plant in the area. These are not only two plants. This is just an example. There are number of the plants which are overexploited as medicinal plant and as a number of the resources, and there are many countries which are importing this from our country, and in this way we are facing loss because of the overexploitation of the bioresources. Then there is pollution of the water bodies also. There is single species, there is single land. This is an example, Poland National Park, where loss of the flora and fauna were reported only because of the severe pollution. 43 species of fauna and flora lost from this single national park. So we can assume that what will be the size of the loss of this because of air pollution in a country. Likewise, such studies was done in India also, and in Keoladev National Park in Rajasthan, it was reported that use of the pesticide residue in screens, and because of this toxic residue, it leads to a high mortality rate. Likewise, there are a number of the other birds which are prey of these pesticides and thus leading to the loss of flora and fauna. Similarly, in case of the water pollution, it also affects the biodiversity as industrial effluents, they are reaching to the water bodies. And the effluents which are coming from the industries, which are coming from the aquatic or sea activity, they are forming a thin layer of the oil over the surface. And because of this, they are suffocating the plants, flora and fauna which is present there in the water bodies, and at the same time it is also cutting the penetration of the light, and thus they are reducing photosynthetic activity of the plants which are present there. So it is not only overuse, but it is also pollution which is leading to the destruction of the habitat and reduction of the biodiversity. Likewise, many a time introduction of the exotic species, they also play a threat to the indigenous diversity. For example, when we plant these exotic species, they are mainly for the purpose of some gain from this, as they are the bioresource. But later on, after some time, when they become invasive in nature, then they start posing threat to the indigenous plants and indigenous animals. So we are well aware of the exotic weeds such as lantana and parthenium, and along with this, Hyptis, malacra, then a number of the Acacia species, number of the Leucaena species, they came as only weed, and now they are posing problem for forest management. In many part of the country, these indigenous species are replaced because of the commercial use of exotic plants such as eucalyptus. For example, in 1982, at that time in Rajasthan, there was a big plantation which was done by eucalyptus only, and later on it was realized that Rajasthan, which is already a drier area where the permanent water body is very low, at that time plantation of the eucalyptus has converted area more drier because this eucalyptus plant is acting like a water pump. Similarly, in many part of the India, northeastern part and also southwestern part, there is replacement of the local crop to accommodate the cash crop like coffee, rubber, cardamom, and tea. So wider area now when comes under this, it means there is loss of the place for the native vegetation, and ultimately it will convert into loss of biodiversity. Now, if we see whether this loss of biodiversity because of the invasive species is only loss of the biodiversity, or it has some point in the matter of money also. So when we compare loss because of this invasiveness, if it is $78.5 million in the United States, it is $91.02 in case of the India. And this is because of invasion in the form of weeds of the cropland and pasture land, invasions of the vertebrates, the loss of the crop, invasion of the arthropods, which cut the crops and forest, and similarly plant pathogens which are harming crops and forest. So in sum total, it is a big loss because of the invasive species. Likewise, if we compare the species in the United States and India, here again we find that if in the United States out of 42,000 species, 25,000 are alien. In case of India, from 45,000, these are only 18,000. So although number is lesser than the United States, but if we count in term of money, it is more than that of the United States. It is not only the money matter, because these biotic invasions, which are particularly aliens, which are coming from the outside of biogeographic zones of India, They are responsible for human health, environmental quality, socio-economic. They are responsible for habitat destruction, land use changes, climate changes, and ultimately there is loss of the biodiversity, which is only because of invasion by alien species. Then there are few other environmental factors which are also responsible for loss of biodiversity, particularly in India. So rapid economic growth and limitation in integrating environmental concern into developmental planning have put increasing pressure on biodiversity across India, which is one of the globally recognized megadiversity country rich in biodiversity. With only 2.4% of the Earth's land area, India accounts for 7 to 8% of world's recorded species. So now we know that although we are only 2.4% in the Earth land area, but we are second in the size of the population and we are having 7 to 8% of the world's recorded species. For the sake of development, in comparison to the developed country, we are considered as we are said to be less developed or developing country. So in this race of development, we forget that there is need of the environment concern and there is need to make a development in such a way that it should not reduce our natural resources. And ultimately all this entire environmental development or development in industry or urbanization, it has led to the global warming and it reduces the development and natural environment. So if we see the status of rare and endangered species, we find that India is having large number of extinct species, each and every category of endangered, from extinct, endangered, vulnerable, rare, intermediate. Total under threat is more than 1,000, that is 1,236 species are endangered and they are 7.7% of the species are under threat. On this, there are a number of the agricultural practices which are also responsible for this status of the biodiversity. Over the years, farmers have bred and maintained a tremendous diversity of the crop and livestock variety. The broad gene bank provided insurance against pest, disease, adverse and climatic condition. But in last few decades, it prompted by growing demand for food and by market forces, modern agriculture has moved towards fewer crop varieties which are high yielding and respond better to water, chemical fertilizer and pesticide. So it is very interesting to know that we are having more than 60,000 land races of the rice. We are having hundreds of races of the wheat, jowar, bajra and makkah. We are Babylonian center. Number of the species they have originated in the India and then spread everywhere. So such a fertile land and having so many biodiversity, but still we are using only few varieties of the rice, wheat or other crop plants. For example, in case of rice, our dependence on why we should need basmati or kali mooch or HMT. So only few, why we go for the few and then we are using big land mass for development for growing this particular crop. And then these varieties, they also need a large quantity of the water, chemical fertilizer and pesticide. So in this way, it is also changing the environmental condition, water holding capacity, and they are polluting the atmosphere. Stability and diversity are thus being replaced by uniformity and productivity. Similarly, in case of the forestry also, monoculture leading to the substantial loss of the biodiversity. In many parts of the India, commercial plantation of a single species have replaced several other species. So when big chunk of the area is utilized for growth of only one particular plant, it means there is loss of space for other species to survive. So it is of concern because we have to change our ways. When we say that we are having 60,000 land races of the rice, so all these races they are distributed in different part of the country. So why not use local race for the cultivation and for fulfilling our thing? And another important point, we have to search for other alternatives. If sugarcane is destroying the water level of the land, so we have to see something else, other alternative for fulfilling the need of the sugar. Likewise, instead of having only rice and wheat as our staple food, we can move to the other races or other plants like small millets for fulfilling our need of the food, feed and fodder. Many a time it is our ignorance that is responsible for loss of traditional uh, knowledge and also the number of the plants. Tribal groups in India are known to use about 5,000 species of the wild plant for various purposes. The tradition, belief, needs, and culture of these tribal people are subsistence agriculturists are linked to the diversity of life around them. But now, the lifestyle of these communities are fast changing, and if their traditional knowledge is not recorded, understood, and passed on, we are likely to lose it all. And when one thing which is not used or less used, it is going to die because we are not aware about their uses, and these communities are changing their way of living. So in this way they are also forgetting what they have gained from their predecessors. Then inequity is another thing which is also responsible for loss of biodiversity. Inequities in the ownership, management, and flow of benefits from the use and consumption of biological resources, encouraging unsustainable exploitation, which leads to loss of biodiversity. Substantial area in India significant for their biodiversity are owned by the state or center as reserve forests, protected forests, national parks, and sanctuary. So this development of conservation in the form of protection of the area is also coming in the way of local utilization of the biological resources. And when one finds that there is only small space available for them to use, they are overusing it or plundering it, and it leads to the loss of biodiversity. In the past, local communities living within or around these areas, they derived benefit from and in turn were also the local custodian of some of the areas. As they were knowing that these are the plants, this is the area, these are the animals which are in use. So if they overuse this, one time will come, then they will lose it. So they were there to protect it, they were there to use it. But because of their curtailment of their traditional rights and benefits, these communities are now beginning to wonder who benefits from the protection of these areas. As they were the user of the local flora and fauna, but now they cannot move in that area, they cannot use that area. So this is the question, for whom this all part of the area is under the protection. So this conflict is now being seen in several parts of the India's protected areas, and these areas which are rich in biodiversity and particularly wildlife have been kept aside for conservation, but conservation for whom? So this is a big question. Although you are protecting the area, you are conserving it for multiplication of the natural flora and fauna. But those people who are thrown away from that area, they are still in search of their resources. Then global trading system is also comes in the way of protection of biodiversity. Trading system that favors the growth of the monoculture, use of the produce crop for export on a large scale can have negative effect on biodiversity. See, monoculture is always wrong because if something happen, if any pest, if any negative thing affect this culture, there will be loss of entire vegetation or flora in that area. But at the same time, when you are going for exporting the thing, it means you have to grow these particular species in the form of monoculture, and this have negative impact on the biodiversity. For example, many tropical countries encouraged by international lending institution, which support the planting of extensive area of agricultural land with sugarcane, bananas, and pulp trees to produce commodities for export in order to expand the economy. So this export-led growth, it is under the direction of foreign countries. I will pay you this much of amount if you export this particular thing. So use of the sugarcane, agriculture of the bananas and pulp trees for making the paper. As we know in foreign countries, paper is used for each and everything, from toilet to the other type of the activity. So they need more pulp trees, but they are saving they are protecting their own flora and fauna, but they are importing all these from the other countries. At present, it is the stage of Africa where large chunk of the land is owned by or is in lease by other countries, and they are favoring only plantation of these cash crops, that is export-led growth. So critics point out that such an approach primarily benefits the large plantation owners only, and they are causing pollution and destroy biodiversity. So by such type of global trading activity, we are losing our land, we are losing productivity of the land, and this all favors only those who are owning that plantation or those who are importing this material. Likewise, in India, there is a large number of unplanned development. This development may be necessity at particular time, at particular place, but if we see in sum total, what is their impact? For example, development of so many dams between 51 to 85,000, 5 lakhs 2,000 hectares of land were diverted from River Valley project in India, not only caused submergence of the large tract of forest but also gave rise to settlement and roads in the forest area. It is estimated that 60% of rivers catchment cover is badly fragmented, severely affecting the biodiversity. So now there is a discussion whether the big dams are useful or making number of the small dams, because in making the big dams on the river, although we are able to convert into hydel electricity or providing water to the agriculture, but for making of such big size of the land like Bhakra Number Dam or Narmada Dam or dam on the Mahanadi, these are the perennial rivers, but large number of the area comes under the submergence, and when it is submerged area, it means we lost big track of the forest and biodiversity which is present in that area. And again, for reaching to that particular dam area, number of the roads and number of the settlements are formed just to make these dams workable. So in this way, 60% of the river catchment area, they become fragmented. Biodiversity of that area. Then India is also known as a country which is having large number of mining activities. These mining activity, if we see this picture, they are scattered all over the country except in Srinagar, part of the northeast region and a little bit of the Gujarat portion. In rest of the India, particularly in the central India, large number of the mines are present. And making the mines, taking out the minerals, it means loss of biodiversity in that area. We have a good example of Goa, where mining covers 500 square kilometer or 14% of the total state area. Nearly 600 mining companies are in force in the 350 square kilometer of the area which lie beneath the forest area rich in the biodiversity. It is also very interesting to know those areas which are rich in biodiversity, they are also rich in minerals. So if you want to use that mineral, if you want to excavate that mineral, you have to destroy the forest. But again question comes, destruction or utility of the mineral, extraction of the mineral at the cost of loss of many endemic endangered species, as we have seen in case of the Goa, we have seen in case of the Kerala and even Western Ghat. Even in central part of India or our own Vidarbha, number of the companies which are coming, as it is known as belt of coal, belt of minerals. So number of the companies, they are coming and they are excavating the earth, but they are also removing the forest, and there is no sure shot program for the afforestation of the area. And being scientists, we know that it is also not possible to convert wasteland which is coming from the bad soil which is coming from inside of the earth is usable or is cultivable. So in this way, for the sake of some minerals, a small quantity of the minerals, we are losing our last track of biodiversity. Then there are many policies of the government, there is economic systems which are also responsible, because very rarely we see that environment or its resources had some value. We never see a plant as a source of money. So biological diverse naturally systems are more often undervalued in monetary terms, and as a result are converted into agricultural lands or other industrial developmental activities, and which are having direct effect on the economy benefits. So while cutting the tree, we are losing the tree, we are losing that bioresources, and after some time, the same area becomes barren because there is a limit for providing. A barren land cannot support growth of the plant, although you may develop any industry. So in this way, our economic systems and policies are also responsible because we not value our biodiversity. There are inflexible rules, regulations, and these regulations are also responsible for loss of biodiversity. This may be because rarely a cross-sectorial approach is adopted which combines ecological and economic realities. Over-centralization of planning hinders participation, which might have brought knowledge, insight, and experience of local environment into the planning process. We have Forest Act, we have Biodiversity Act, we have Wildlife Act, but they are not sufficient or they are not in collaborating with each other, and in this way they are turning the environment badly, and this is reported in the form of environmental act. If you are going for the environmental act, you cannot leave an area for the further development. Likewise, if you go for the forest act, number of the changes are coming in the forest act or biodiversity act, but with the passing of the time, there is need to understand this, what is the need of today and what is required for the future generation. So our main concern is how to maintain the functioning of the ecological services that support human livelihood. Entire activity, whether it was deforestation, whether it was change in the land use pattern, whether it was industrialization, all these were to favor the development of human livelihood. But at the same time, this biodiversity is also responsible for ecological functioning. With the rising population, now a question becomes how to maintain biodiversity or ecological services and also support the human livelihood. So maintaining the right of the local people and protecting their traditional habitat is one of the way by which we can utilize the diversity and at the same time we can maintain the diversity also. Expansion of the protected area, resource management and patient prevention can reverse their trend for specific habitat and species. For instance, protected areas coverage has doubled over the past 20 years and terrestrial protected areas now cover 12% of the Earth's surface. In Tamil Nadu, this example is from the Tamil Nadu where declaration of Kanyakumari, Satyamangalam and Megamalai sanctuaries percentage of protected area of the local forest area has gone from 14.79% to 20.01%. So within a short period of time, there is sudden increase in the number of the forested area because of the protection. This increase is only within the 3 years. Introduction of a system of joint forest management over 20 million hectares in the last 2 decades has minimized biodiversity losses. Similarly, implementation of afforestation project over last 15 years with people's participation has helped restore forest and rejuvenate biodiversity over 6.5 lakh hectare in Tamil Nadu. So Tamil Nadu is giving one example, one mode of action by which we can conserve our biodiversity and we can also utilize this biodiversity. A very small period is needed for the protection and if government machineries are not sufficient and it is the case also, so why not utilize the locals which are living there? Their participation in the management will help in the development of the big biodiversity in that particular area. Now, here this is the figure which shows if conservation of diversity, ecosystem, species and genes is not done, then what will happen? If we see the historical area, that is before 1970, it was rich in biodiversity, both flora and fauna. By 2010, there is decrease in the biodiversity, but at the same time, conservation efforts also increase and it leads to the increase in the sustainable production and sustainable consumption. But if we have not gone for this conservation, then what happened? That is reduction. If the business is as usual, then there is reduction in the biodiversity. And if there is in conservation effort, then there is a chance that by next century, there will be enough amount of biodiversity to protect or to serve the population. So, conserving and enhancing floral and faunal diversity through the active involvement of joint forest management and sustainable livelihood support by community is one of the way. And here, collaboration means you have to discuss, you have to take knowledge from the locals and involve them for the protection and sustainable use of the forest produces, then only we can protect the area and its biodiversity. So during all these efforts, what happens to the forest? If we see it, In 2000, there is gradual increase in the forest cover from 1991 when the joint forest management was started. 1991 to 2015, there is increase in the percentage of the forest. But at the same time, we find that there is increase in the open forest ground cover also. Open forest ground cover means area of shrubland or area which is having barren land with some stunted growth plant. So there is gradual increase in this stunted open forest type of the area. And if we see counting the tree is different than having large number of the area with so many plants. So if we see the forest and tree cover of the India, we find number of the changes. As forest and tree cover of India shows change in the 0.8%, while forest area is small and tree cover of the area is big. 1.29% increase in the area. But entire this is monoculture plantation, so we cannot say that this will remain there because it is there only for the industrial purposes. Likewise, there is change in the mangrove cover of India also. So in sum total, we can say that although the government is working, although number of the laws, acts are coming, people are now realizing that they have to work hard, they have to protect, and they have to go for sustainable development, then only their future lies. So there is protection, there is increase in the forest cover area, but still we can say that harming activities are going on and which is exemplified by open forest ground cover. So one of the activity which is there for protection, that is development of large number of the protected areas. So these protected areas, they are scattered all over the India. Roughly 1,56,700 square kilometer area, that is 4.95% of the area is under the protected area. There are number of the coastal and marine protected area also for arresting land degradation and for extensive conservation. But what is needed that this conservation program should cover all remaining portion of the non-protected area of the several states. Then interest in the medicinal plant, as India is home to 8,000 medicinal plant species which are growing naturally in the forest, and they are forming healthcare of 60 to 80% of the population, and it is providing 320 million that live on less than $1 per day. So development of network of medicinal plant conservation area in several areas is required. It can be done by collaboration with the government or the NGOs. Integrated traditional medicine into the government primary health system will make realize that these plants are useful for the in general population of the India, because we don't have that paying capacity, and still 60 to 80% of the population is using it. So why not conserve it, grow it, protect it, so that we can utilize for our own health, and at the same time we can have uh, money by selling this to the other areas. Then there is question of ensuring equal and equitable distribution of profits from the use of genetic resources. These genetic resources, when we utilize them for sake of development of medicine, for sake of development of many resources, and for our research purposes, whatever benefit we are gaining, it has to be shared. Equal sharing is required for development of all society, and thus it will protect from the plundering of the genetic resources and biotic resources. One interesting thing is urban areas or cities. As we know that once India was considered as a area which is having large number of the rural, one third of the Indian population used to live in rural areas, one third in the city and rest in the rural areas. But now there is migration from rural areas to the city areas for the sake of their livelihood. It means urban cities are increasing in size and the rural areas they remain as such without any much activities. So this rapid progress toward urban ways of life shape the ecology, natural resources and biodiversity in the India. The attention of Indian ecologists and conservation biologists are largely focused on understanding
இந்த
natural
இது
ecosystem
வந்து இது
as
வரைக்கும் மட்டும் ஒரு
forest in protected areas only.
செல்ஃப் வேண்டாம்
Urban
சும்மா ஒரு பலகை
researchers rarely study ecology, while ecologists rarely consider cities worth of the attention. So thus urban biodiversity remains a double blind spot as rising population, loss of the biodiversity because of the increase in the area and there is nobody to see whether these urban areas they are also have chance to develop this biodiversity. So biodiversity is essential in cities also. We need trees and plants to clean out polluted air and water. It helps in groundwater percolation, ensure continued monsoon, cool the overheated cemented concrete city, besides providing our daily needs, medicine, fruits, vegetables, flowers, grazing material. Urban biodiversity is also essential for good physical and mental health,
ஆமா
providing safe space for exercise,
வேற எப்படி இருக்கு
meditation, relaxation, relief from stress.
லைட் போட்டுருங்க
So, there is need of greening the urban areas and it is possible by developing parks, avenue trees, home gardens, plantations, wetlands around the urban cities. So by this we will not only change the texture of the city but also provide the lung to these green cities or urban cities and in this way by planting so many different type of the variety actually we are trying to protect the biodiversity in that area although in a very small amount. So our welfare is intimately connected with the welfare of the wildlife. By saving the lives of wild plants and animals, we will be saving our own. Time is running out. We can no longer remain spectator. We need to think globally but act locally, rededicating ourselves to protecting biodiversity in forest, in coastal ecosystem, and in our own neighborhood. Although there are number of the issues regarding biodiversity, but as we have seen, all they are only because giving comfort to the rising population. And this comfort level is now increasing, but at the cost of our own biodiversity. So if we want our own survival, we have to think in other way that we have to protect our biodiversity, then only our own welfare is so these are the issues, then these are our concerns, and that's why we have to see alternative, how we can reduce our extraction of the resources, how we have to search alternatives of the energy, alternative of all the resources, and our way of living. Then only we can conserve our biodiversity. Thank you.
On Indian biodiversity issues, challenges, and initiatives. Now the session is open for your queries. Roka? Definitely, I will
See, any question? I'm here.
हे जगते काय
तर हे असे होईल नाही का?
रूटच नाही त्याला
हा आउटडोर प्लांट आहे
लावलाय ना तो आपण तिथं
अंदर होत नाही.
Any queries?
Hello.
I think there is no queries in any participants because Madam has resolved all the queries regarding the Indian biodiversity. So once again, thank you very much, Madam. Now, over to Professor Supat, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Patil, sir. Thank you, Dr. Patil, sir. Now, I would like to invite our beloved principal, Dr. Sanjay Kandode, sir, Vidyabharti College, Seloo, to say a few words about this webinar. Over to Dr. Sanjay Kandode, sir. Please, sir.
हॅलो,
Yes, sir.
आवाज येतोय का?
Yes, sir. Yes.
आवाज येतोय माझा?
Yes, sir.
एक मिनिट हा. हॅलो.
Yes, sir. You are audible. You can proceed.
बोल. ओके ओके. विद्याभारती महाविद्यालय सेलू येथील सायन्स फॅकल्टीच्या बॉटनी विभागाच्या माध्यमातून आज नॅशनल वेबिनार आयोजित करण्यात आलेला आहे. नॅशनल वेबिनार याचा विषय इंडियन बायोडायव्हर्सिटी इश्यू, चॅलेंजेस अँड इनिशिएटिव्ह हा असून यामध्ये प्रमुख वक्ते म्हणून RTMU नागपूर युनिव्हर्सिटी नागपूर येथील बॉटनी डिपार्टमेंटच्या प्रमुख प्रोफेसर डॉक्टर अलका चतुर्वेदी मॅडम यांनी आपल्याला या विषयाच्या संदर्भामध्ये माहिती दिलेली आहे. प्रथम मी त्यांचे महाविद्यालयाचे वतीने आभार व्यक्त करतो, त्यांचे धन्यवाद मानतो. आज जो प्रमुख विषय आपल्याला दिसतोय बायोडायव्हर्सिटीच्या संदर्भामध्ये, याच असणारे काही चॅलेंजेस आहेत, त्यामधले काही इश्यूज आहेत, यावरती त्यांनी आपल्या भाषणातून जो प्रकाश टाकला, मला असं वाटतं की नक्कीच त्याचा फायदा या विभागाच्या फॅकल्टीजना त्या ठिकाणी मिळेल. साधारणपणे आजच्या या एकूण 100 पार्टिसिपंट्स सहभागी झालेले आहेत. मी या सर्वांचे देखील आभार व्यक्त करतो आणि महाविद्यालयाच्या बायोडायव्हर्सिटी महाविद्यालयाच्या बॉटनी विभागाचे प्रमुख डॉक्टर खुशाल पठाडे, त्याचप्रमाणे डॉक्टर विशाल पाटील आणि कुपट सर यांनी हा सेमिनार आयोजित करण्याकरिता जे सहकार्य केलं त्यांचं देखील मी या माध्यमातून त्यांचे आभार व्यक्त करतो. आणि अशाच प्रकारचे वेबिनार्स सातत्याने महाविद्यालयात व्हायला पाहिजे. आज जी परिस्थिती महाविद्यालयामध्ये किंवा संपूर्ण देशामध्ये कोविड-19च्या संदर्भामध्ये आपल्याला दिसून येत आहे, त्या अनुषंगाने आज आपण प्रत्यक्ष भेट या ठिकाणी घेऊ शकत नाही. अनेक निर्बंध आपल्यावरती लादण्यात या निमित्तानं आलेली आहेत आणि त्यामुळे आज प्रत्यक्ष आपण अशा प्रकारचे वेबिनार्स, अशा प्रकारचे सेमिनार्स आयोजित करू शकत नाही. आणि म्हणून आज या इंटरनेटच्या माध्यमातून, इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्सच्या माध्यमातून आपण अशा प्रकारचे ऑनलाईन या ठिकाणी सेमिनार, वर्कशॉप आयोजित करत आहे. यासाठी जो काही टेक्निकल सपोर्ट आपल्याला लागतो तो आपल्याला या ठिकाणी जो मिळतो आहे त्यांचे देखील मी आभार व्यक्त करतो. आणि पुनश्च एकदा डॉक्टर अलका चतुर्वेदी मॅडमचे मी धन्यवाद मानतो आणि मी रजा घेतो. धन्यवाद.
थँक्यू.
एक ऍक्टिव्हिटी पार पडली.
काय करता सर आता कर.
Hello. Thank you, Dr. Kanode sir, for your kind and inspiring words about this webinar. Now we are coming to the end of this webinar. Today, Department of Botany, Vidyabharti College, Seloo, organized one-day national webinar on Indian biodiversity, issues, challenges, and initiatives. Honorable dignitaries, distinguished guests, respected principal, and dear participants, I, Professor Anurag Kupat, PG Department of Botany, on behalf of Vidyabharti College, this entire fraternity and the organizing committee, it gives me an immense pleasure to take this opportunity to propose a vote of thanks to our eminent speaker, Dr. Alka Chaturvedi ma'am, ex-professor and head, PG Department of Botany, Rashtrasanta Tukadoji Maharaj, Nagpur University, Nagpur, who spared the time from her busy schedule to grace this webinar with her extremely relevant address. Thank you, ma'am, for enlightening the participants on various aspects about the concerning subject. Your interesting, thought-provoking address on the topic would help participants to gain a lot more from it. I immensely thank to ma'am for her precious time and company. I take this opportunity to specially express my regards and gratitude to Honorable Dr. R.G. Boyer sir, President Vidyabharti Sanstha Wardha, for always encouraging us and providing opportunities to organize such events. I also wish to express my gratitude to our beloved principal, chairman of this webinar, Dr. Sanjay Kanode sir, for their unfaltering support and motivation throughout the process for conducting this webinar. My deep sense of appreciation and thanks to all the participants who chose to be live with and attended the webinar with a great enthusiasm and made it a successful event. I extend my thanks to Dr. Kushal Patade sir, convener of this webinar, head PG Department of Botany, for organizing this webinar. My sincere gratitude also goes to the organizing secretary of this webinar, Dr. Vishal Patil sir, assistant professor, PG Department of Botany. I also thank to my colleagues for their support, cooperation, and appreciation. Last but not the least, I extend my special thanks to Dr. Bangenwar sir, Arts and Science College, Kulgaon, for technical support in smooth running of this webinar. We are happy to share that the huge response we have got from all states of India. There were more than 400 participants registered for this webinar. For this, we all are thankful to all. Once again, I thank you all for being with us for this webinar. With this, I announce that the webinar is over. This is Professor Anurag Kupat signing off. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Am I audible, Patil sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Shall I stop the streaming right now?
Now you can stop.